All right, let's dive into this. We got some excerpts here from Overcoming the Meaning Crisis. And wow, this looks like it gets into some pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, it really tackles some big questions.
Yeah, it really does. We're talking history, evolution, societal trends, and even some practical advice for finding meaning. Where do we even begin?
Well, right off the bat, the book frames this whole thing as a meaning crisis.
Oh, okay. A meaning crisis.
Yeah. And it's not just, a few people feeling a little lost. It's like a widespread thing in society.
So it's a societal issue, not just an individual one. Interesting.
Exactly. The book argues that it's rooted in a decline in, traditional beliefs, the shift towards secularism. A lot of people are left searching for purpose in a world that, sometimes feels kind of empty.
Yeah, I can see that. And it looks like the book dives into a lot of different factors that play into this crisis. Consumerism, obesity, even our disconnect from nature.
Yeah, it connects all of that.
Let's start with that disconnect from nature. It feels like we hear a lot about that these days. What does the book say about it?
Well, it basically argues that our modern lifestyles, being cooped up indoors all the time,
Yeah.
have cut us off from our natural roots. And that has negative psychological consequences.
Hmm.
I mean, think about it. For most of human history, we were way more connected to nature.
Right.
Our ancestors, even without all the scientific data we have now, they just inherently understood the benefits.
It was just part of life. Right.
Right. But now it's like we've traded that inherent understanding for the hustle and bustle of modern life.
Hmm.
And, well, it's taking a toll.
It makes sense, though. We spend so much time indoors staring at screens.
Exactly.
It's easy to forget how good it feels to be out in nature.
Yeah. And that's just one piece of the puzzle. The book also goes into consumerism.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that chasing material possessions
Doesn't really make us happy.
doesn't lead to lasting happiness.
Yeah.
It's that whole hedonic treadmill thing, right?
Exactly. You get the new thing, you're happy for a minute.
And then what?
You need something else to get that same high.
Exactly. And the book actually cites research showing that, increased income, more money,
Doesn't equal more happiness.
isn't actually correlated with increased happiness.
That's a pretty big claim, considering our society basically tells us we need more to be happy.
Yeah. More stuff, more money, more status.
But the book is saying it's kind of a trap.
It is. And it gets even more thought-provoking when the book dives into this paradox, obesity and starvation, existing side by side in our modern world.
Wow, yeah. That's a really interesting point. How can those two extremes exist at the same time?
Right. It's complex, but the book explores how our food system is, well, it's pretty messed up.
I mean, yeah.
We have this overabundance of processed food and, everyone's sitting around all day.
Leading to an obesity epidemic.
Right. And at the same time,
Millions of people don't have enough to eat.
millions are facing starvation. It's a jarring juxtaposition.
Yeah, it is.
It's not like the book offers easy solutions, but it definitely makes you think about our priorities. If we're in a meaning crisis, maybe it's time to reconsider what actually brings fulfillment and well-being.
Okay, so we've talked about the problems, the crisis. What about solutions? What does the book suggest we can do about all of this?
Well, it highlights this idea of individual resilience. Even when things feel overwhelming, you can still find your own sense of purpose.
Okay.
There's this one story in the book about a man who found meaning through, really meaningful activities, even though he was facing some crazy adversity.
So even when things are tough
You still have the power to choose how you respond.
and to find purpose, it's a pretty powerful message.
It is.
So what kind of meaningful activities are we talking about here?
Things like volunteering, pursuing your passion, stuff like that. Things that give you a sense of accomplishment
Okay.
and connect you to something bigger than yourself. And, that ties into the book's emphasis on community.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Community seems to be a recurring theme. Why is it so important, according to the book?
Well, it argues that humans are social beings. We thrive on connection.
Right.
But as society becomes more individualistic,
We lose touch with that.
we've lost touch with that basic need.
Yeah.
Finding like-minded people, it can give you a sense of belonging and shared purpose, something that a lot of people are missing.
It's like finding your tribe, people who get you.
Exactly. And this is especially important for men, which the book dives into quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that part. It looks like it gets into some of the specific challenges men face in today's world, right?
It does. It talks about this idea of a war on men.
Whoa, a war on men.
Yeah. And how traditional masculine roles are being questioned and redefined.
Yeah, that's definitely a hot button issue.
It is.
What kind of examples does the book give?
Well, it actually cites popular media, like the Big Bang Theory.
Oh,
Men are often shown as, like, incompetent.
right.
And then there's The Godfather.
Where masculinity equals brutality.
Exactly.
So the book is saying that these portrayals are contributing to a sense of alienation among men.
Yeah. It's like these negative portrayals, combined with all the other societal shifts,
Have led to a decline in traditional male roles,
have eroded traditional male roles and purpose.
which contributes to the meaning crisis.
Exactly.
Makes sense. I mean, if men are feeling lost and purposeless,
It affects their well-being.
it affects their overall well-being for sure.
The book even highlights the rise in male depression, anxiety, and suicide rates,
Yeah.
and suggests a correlation with these changes.
Wow. This is heavy stuff. So what does the book propose as a solution? What can men do about all of this?
Well, this is where it gets interesting. The book suggests that men need to red pill themselves.
Wait, red pill? Like from the Matrix?
Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
It uses that analogy to describe this process of, like, waking up, seeing the uncomfortable truths about society.
So it's about questioning the narratives we're being fed.
Yes, and seeking out evidence-based knowledge.
So challenging assumptions and finding your own truth.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming your power and agency, especially in a world that often feels like it's working against you.
Okay, I'm with you so far. This red pilling sounds pretty intense, though.
It can be.
Is there a way to approach these ideas with a sense of balance? You know, not get too caught up in the negativity.
That's a great question. And yeah, the book actually points to something it calls rational spirituality.
Rational spirituality.
Yeah, it's like this middle ground. It integrates logic and evidence with, spiritual exploration.
So you can find meaning and purpose without having to buy into, like, traditional religious dogma.
Exactly. It's about using your mind to explore spirituality and find your own truth.
I like that. So
Yep.
it encourages personal responsibility and critical thinking.
Yep. While still acknowledging that there's more to life than just the material world.
This rational spirituality thing is really intriguing. It feels like a way to find meaning in a world that can be pretty chaotic and confusing. What else does the book offer, in terms of actual steps people can take?
Well, there's this really interesting section on symbols and synchronicity.
Wait, symbols and synchronicity. That sounds a little out there.
It might, but the book argues that symbols have this power to connect us to deeper meanings. And synchronicity, those weird coincidences, they could be seen as messages guiding us on our journey.
So it's about being open to a deeper meaning behind things that seem random.
Exactly. It encourages a shift in perspective.
A way of looking at the world that goes beyond just the purely rational.
Yeah. And it suggests that this can be really valuable, especially for those who are on a journey of self-discovery.
This is all pretty fascinating stuff. It seems like this book is challenging us to really rethink our assumptions about the world and our place in it.
It is.
But where do we go from here? How do we actually apply these ideas to our lives?
That's a great question, and thankfully the book gets into that too. It talks about the importance of rituals and routines in creating meaning. And it uses examples from, like, traditional societies to show how we can adapt those principles to modern life.
Okay, so it's not just about big philosophical ideas. It's also about practical things we can do.
Right. It's about creating our own rituals and practices that connect us to something bigger than ourselves.
So being intentional with our time and actions.
Yeah.
Giving them more significance.
Exactly. Now, the book also dives into the evolution of human consciousness, like way back, starting with Homo habilis.
Wow, okay.
Their use of tools, their bigger brains.
Yeah.
It's like the first steps in this incredible journey.
It's amazing to think about how far we've come.
It is. And the book really emphasizes how each stage builds on the one before it. So next, we've got Homo erectus, mastering fire, developing even more complex social behaviors.
Okay.
Then Neanderthals. They were capable of symbolic thought. They created art, buried their dead.
It's crazy to think that our ancient ancestors were grappling with these same questions of meaning and purpose.
It seems like it's just part of being human, right?
Yeah.
Then, of course, Homo sapiens, our own species, complex societies, language, abstract thought.
All the building blocks for, like, culture and belief systems.
That's exactly.
Our whole understanding of the world.
And the book argues that these things, these capacities, they're not just products of evolution. They're reflections of our spiritual nature.
So we're hardwired for meaning.
It's like we're driven to seek something more, something that transcends our physical existence.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
But I imagine the drive for meaning can be really challenged by, like, nihilism. The belief that life is just Inherently meaningless.
Oh, absolutely. The book addresses that head on. It acknowledges how prevalent those attitudes are in modern society.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to feel that way.
Right, with everything going on. It's understandable why some people might question if there's any point to it all.
Exactly. So how does the book deal with that?
Well, it dives into the ideas of philosophers like Albert Camus and Nietzsche, guys who really wrestled with these questions.
Okay, so it's not shying away from the hard stuff.
Nope. It suggests that nihilism can be a destructive force, leading to apathy and lack of motivation.
Right.
But it can also be a starting point for creating a new kind of meaning.
Oh, interesting. So instead of accepting meaninglessness, you can use it as fuel to find your own meaning?
Exactly. The book emphasizes finding meaning through action, through engaging with the world, connecting with others. It's about identifying what gives you a sense of purpose, a reason to get out of bed each morning.
That's a great way to put it. So it's not about passively accepting whatever life throws at you. It's about taking ownership.
Yes, choosing to create meaning, even in a world that might seem inherently meaningless.
I like that. And you mentioned before how the book emphasizes community.
It does. It's not all about individual effort.
Right. We're not meant to do this alone.
Exactly. When we're connected to others, we're less likely to feel lost.
We all need that sense of belonging, especially in a world that can feel so vast and overwhelming sometimes.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another big theme in the book, the decline of traditional religious beliefs.
Oh, yeah. How does that tie into the meaning crisis?
Well, the book argues that religion, historically, it provided a framework for understanding the world, our place in it.
It gave people a sense of community, moral guidance,
Yeah.
a belief in something bigger than themselves.
All things that contribute to a sense of purpose.
Right. But of course, religion has its downsides too.
It does. The book acknowledges that. How it's been used to control and manipulate people. It's a complicated history.
It is. So if traditional religion isn't necessarily the answer anymore, what does the book suggest?
It proposes rational spirituality.
Right.
Which, as we touched on earlier, is this approach that integrates reason, evidence, and personal experience. It's like using your mind to explore spiritual concepts, but you're still grounded in critical thinking.
So you don't have to just blindly follow dogma. You can find your own truth.
Yeah. The book encourages personal responsibility, exploration, and it acknowledges that this is an ongoing journey. There's no final destination.
Right. It's about constantly learning and growing, evolving in your understanding.
Right. And here's where things get even more interesting. The book talks about this war on truth.
Whoa, a war on truth. What's that all about?
It's this idea that with fake news, propaganda, all the political correctness,
It's hard to know what to believe anymore.
it's getting harder to tell what's real and what's not. We're bombarded with information from every direction.
And everyone seems to have an agenda. It's overwhelming.
It is. And the book argues that this erosion of truth, this constant uncertainty.
It makes it even harder to find solid ground for meaning and purpose.
Exactly. It's like trying to build a house on shifting sand.
I love that analogy. Without a solid foundation of truth, everything feels unstable.
Right. And the book goes on to explore how the media, social media, technology, it all plays a role in this.
Yeah, it's hard to escape it.
It's almost like we're being constantly manipulated without even realizing it.
Yeah.
So the book encourages us to, sharpen our critical thinking skills,
Okay.
develop media literacy.
So we can navigate this crazy landscape.
Exactly. It's about questioning everything and actively seeking out evidence-based information.
So instead of just passively absorbing whatever comes our way.
We have to be more discerning, more skeptical.
Right. Be active seekers of truth.
Yes. And that's where personal responsibility comes in.
Huh.
We can't just blame, outside forces for this war on truth. We each have to examine our own beliefs.
Right.
Be open to new information. And be willing to change our minds when we see evidence that challenges what we thought we knew.
That's powerful. It's about taking ownership of your own beliefs,
Exactly.
not just blindly following what you're told.
Okay, so to combat all these negative influences, the book introduces this really fascinating concept, reclaiming your mind.
Reclaiming our minds. That sounds pretty intense. What does that even mean?
Well, it starts with awareness, recognizing how we're constantly being bombarded with messages and narratives that are designed to, control our thoughts and behaviors.
That's easier said than done, though. How do you even begin to identify those subtle manipulations?
Right. The book offers some strategies. It talks about developing critical thinking skills, being aware of your own biases, and seeking out alternative perspectives.
It's about challenging your own assumptions, not just taking everything at face value.
Exactly. It's about taking control of your own mind. instead of letting it be dictated by external forces.
Wow. That's a really powerful concept.
Yeah.
But in this whole pursuit of truth, how do you balance logic and intuition?
That's a great question. The book suggests that we can use both, our heads and our hearts, combining logic with intuition to figure out what's true.
So you're not rejecting either one.
Right.
It's about finding that integration.
Exactly. And going back to what we were talking about before, the book suggests that rational spirituality can be a powerful tool for this.
Yeah. Using reason to explore spiritual concepts.
And arrive at your own truth.
It sounds like a really interesting way to find meaning, even if you've moved away from traditional religious beliefs.
It is, and the book emphasizes that this, reclaiming your mind, it's an ongoing process. It's about constantly challenging yourself, learning, and refining your understanding of the world.
It's a journey.
It is. It can be challenging,
I bet.
but the book argues that the rewards are worth it.
Because when you reclaim your mind,
You break free from those external narratives.
you become the author of your own story.
Exactly.
Wow. This is incredible. I'm already feeling like these ideas are giving me a new way to look at things, a way to navigate this complex world and find a more authentic sense of meaning.
That's great to hear. And we've only scratched the surface. The book gets into some even more thought-provoking ideas, like this concept of the Dark Enlightenment.
The Dark Enlightenment, that sounds pretty ominous.
Yeah.
Is it as intense as it sounds?
It might sound intimidating, but it's a fascinating intellectual movement, one that challenges a lot of the mainstream narratives we hear all the time.
So it's about questioning the status quo.
Exactly. It offers a different perspective.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What does this Dark Enlightenment have to say?
So you know how we were just talking about the Dark Enlightenment? It really emphasizes the importance of tradition, something that often gets lost in the modern world.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of those traditional structures and rituals have kind of fallen by the wayside. And you were saying that the book sees that as a problem.
It does. You know, rituals have been a part of human societies forever, for centuries.
So even in our secular world, there's something we can learn from those traditions.
Exactly. The book gives all these examples from traditional societies to illustrate how rituals help us connect to something bigger than ourselves.
Right, like they give us a sense of belonging and community, and they mark these important transitions in life.
Like weddings, graduations, things like that.
Yeah, those rituals have stuck around for a reason. They provide this framework for processing big life events.
Exactly. But the book takes it a step further. It encourages us to, create our own rituals.
Our own rituals.
Yeah. Whether it's a daily meditation or a monthly gathering with friends where you talk about your values, it's the act of creating and engaging in rituals that can really bring that structure and meaning back into our lives.
It's about being intentional,
Yeah.
making our time and actions more meaningful.
Exactly. The book also gets into this whole thing about the evolution of human consciousness, going way back, starting with Homo habilis.
Okay, yeah, we touched on that a little bit earlier.
It highlights how they used tools, how they had increased brain capacity. Those were the first steps.
It's pretty wild to think about how we evolved from those early hominids.
It is, and the book is big on this idea that each stage of evolution, it builds on the one before it. So from Homo habilis, you move on to Homo erectus. They mastered fire. They started showing more complex social behaviors.
Okay.
Then you've got the Neanderthals. They had this capacity for symbolic thought. They created art. They even buried their dead. It's incredible.
It makes you wonder what they were thinking, what they believed in.
Right, were they grappling with these same questions of meaning and purpose? It seems like it.
Yeah, it seems like it's a fundamental part of being human.
Totally. And then, of course, you get to Homo sapiens, our own species. We develop complex societies, language, abstract thought.
The foundation for culture, for everything we know.
And the book argues that all of that, it points to something deeper. These capacities aren't just random byproducts of evolution. They reflect our spiritual nature.
So we're hardwired for meaning and connection.
And for a desire for something more than just our physical existence.
Right, like we're driven to find something that gives our lives purpose.
But the book also brings up this challenge to that drive, nihilism.
Oh yeah, that belief that life is inherently meaningless. That can be a tough one to grapple with.
It can, and the book acknowledges how those nihilistic attitudes are everywhere in our society, leading to feelings of despair and hopelessness, and honestly, it's not hard to see why.
Yeah, with all the negativity we're bombarded with every day, it's easy to get sucked into that kind of thinking.
The book dives into how some major thinkers wrestled with these questions, like Albert Camus, Friedrich Nietzsche, those guys.
So it's not shying away from the complexity of it all.
Not at all. It suggests that, yeah, nihilism can be destructive, but it can also be a starting point
The starting point.
for creating a new kind of meaning.
Oh, interesting. So instead of just surrendering to this idea of meaninglessness, you use it as motivation to forge your own path.
Precisely. The book really emphasizes finding meaning through action, engaging with the world, connecting with others. It's about pinpointing what truly gives you that sense of purpose, that reason to get up every morning.
That's a good way to look at it. It's not just about surviving, it's about thriving, about making a difference.
Exactly. And that brings us back to community. It's not just about solo efforts.
Right. We need each other.
Absolutely. When we're connected to others, we're less likely to feel lost and alone in all of this.
It's about finding that sense of belonging, especially in a world that can feel so vast and overwhelming sometimes.
Totally. Okay, now let's circle back to something we talked about a bit ago. The decline of traditional religious beliefs.
Yeah, the book argues that's played a big part in this whole meaning crisis, right?
It has. You know, religion has historically provided this framework for understanding the world, our place in it.
It gave people a sense of community, moral guidance,
Mm.
a belief in something bigger than themselves.
Which, as we've been talking about, are all things that contribute to a sense of purpose.
Exactly. But of course, religion has its downsides too.
Oh, for sure. The book acknowledges that, how it's been used to control and manipulate people. There's a lot of history there.
Yeah, it's complicated. So if traditional religion isn't necessarily the answer anymore, what does the book offer as an alternative?
Remember that idea we touched on earlier? Rational spirituality.
Oh yeah, it's about using your mind to explore spiritual concepts while still being grounded in critical thinking.
Exactly. It's like this approach that blends reason, evidence, and personal experience.
So you don't have to just blindly accept dogma. You can find your own truth.
Exactly. The book encourages personal responsibility, exploration, and it acknowledges that it's an ongoing journey, not some fixed destination.
It's about constantly learning and growing, evolving in your understanding. That really resonates with me.
Me too. Now buckle up, because here's where things get even more interesting. The book talks about this thing it calls a war on truth.
A war on truth. What's that all about?
It's this idea that with all the fake news, the propaganda,
Yeah.
this culture of political correctness,
It's hard to know what to believe anymore.
it's becoming almost impossible to separate truth from fiction. It's like we're constantly being bombarded with information, but from every direction.
And everyone seems to have an agenda. It can be incredibly overwhelming.
It is, and the book makes this point that this constant erosion of truth, this uncertainty, it makes it that much harder to find any solid ground for meaning and purpose.
Yeah, it's like trying to build your life on shifting sand. Without that foundation of truth, everything feels precarious.
Such a good analogy. The book then delves into the role of the media, social media, technology, how they all play a part in this.
Yeah, it's hard to escape it. Sometimes it feels like we're being manipulated without even realizing it.
Exactly. So the book pushes this idea of sharpening our critical thinking skills, developing media literacy.
So we can navigate this insanely complex information landscape.
Yes, it's about questioning the narratives we're constantly being fed, actively seeking out information that's actually backed by evidence.
So we have to be more discerning, more skeptical. We can't just passively consume everything that's thrown at us.
Exactly. We have to become active seekers of truth. And this is where personal responsibility comes in.
Okay? We can't just blame the media or some shadowy figures for this mess.
Exactly. We each have a responsibility to examine our own beliefs, to be open to new information, and to be willing to change our minds when presented with solid evidence that challenges what we thought we knew.
It's about taking ownership of your beliefs, not just following blindly.
Exactly. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The book introduces this concept it calls reclaiming your mind.
Reclaiming our minds. That sounds intense. What does that even entail?
It starts with awareness, recognizing how we're constantly bombarded with messages and narratives designed to shape our thoughts and behaviors, even without us realizing it.
Yeah, like you said, that's easier said than done. How do we even begin to identify those subtle manipulations?
Right. The book has some really helpful strategies. It talks about developing critical thinking skills, being super aware of your own biases, and actively searching for different perspectives, ones that challenge your own.
It's about questioning your assumptions, not taking things at face value.
Exactly. It's about taking back control of your own mind, not letting it be controlled by external forces, whether it's the media, social media, whatever.
Wow, that's powerful. But with all this talk of critical thinking and challenging assumptions, what about intuition? Where does that fit in?
Great question. The book actually suggests that we need both logic and intuition. You use both your head and your heart to figure out what's true.
So it's not about rejecting one or the other. It's about finding that balance, that integration.
Exactly. And this brings us back to something we mentioned before, rational spirituality. Remember that.
Yeah, it was this approach that combined reason and evidence
Yeah.
with spiritual exploration.
Exactly. And the book suggests that it can be a really powerful tool in this whole process of reclaiming your mind.
I like that. It's about using your intellect to explore spiritual concepts and arrive at your own truth.
Exactly. It encourages curiosity, critical thinking, that willingness to question everything.
And it provides a framework for finding meaning, even if you've moved away from traditional religious beliefs.
Right. And the book stresses that reclaiming your mind, it's not a one-time thing. It's ongoing. It's all about constantly challenging yourself, seeking new information, refining your understanding of the world.
It's a journey.
It is a journey of self-discovery. And the book makes this point that while it can be tough, it's so worth it.
Because when you reclaim your mind,
You break free from those limiting narratives.
you become the author of your own story. I love it.
It's empowering. And we've only just scratched the surface of what the book has to offer. It also delves into this thought-provoking concept called the dark enlightenment.
Dark enlightenment. That sounds pretty intense. Is it as ominous as it sounds?
It might sound a little intimidating, but it's a really fascinating intellectual movement. It challenges a lot of the mainstream narratives, the ones that are kind of taken for granted these days.
So it's about questioning the status quo and offering a different perspective.
Exactly. It emphasizes reason, logic, tradition. It's like a countercultural movement pushing back against what it sees as the excesses of things like postmodernism and cultural Marxism.
So it offers a critique of the modern world
Yeah.
and maybe some alternatives.
Yes, but it's not all negative. It emphasizes personal responsibility, moral clarity, the importance of community and belonging.
It sounds like it's trying to address that sense of meaninglessness we were talking about earlier. That feeling of being lost in a world that's become increasingly individualistic and materialistic.
You got it. The book suggests that the Dark Enlightenment offers a new way of understanding ourselves and the world. It encourages us to connect to something bigger than ourselves, whether that's through traditional religious beliefs, a connection to nature, or finding shared purpose in a community.
It's about finding that sense of belonging in a world that can feel fragmented and chaotic.
Exactly. And becoming active participants in shaping our own destinies, not just passively accepting the narratives we're given.
That's a powerful message. Taking ownership, creating a world that reflects our values. I like that.
Me too. The book also gets into the importance of symbols and synchronicity, how we can interpret them to guide us on our own spiritual journeys.
Symbols and synchronicity. That sounds pretty mystical. Like the universe is sending us messages.
Right. The book explores how symbols connect us to deeper meanings, how they evoke powerful emotions. Think about it. Symbols represent complex ideas, they make us feel things, and they connect us to something larger than ourselves.
Yeah, like a flag can represent an entire nation.
Yeah.
Or a religious icon can evoke a whole system of beliefs. Even simple things like a heart or a peace sign, they carry so much meaning.
Exactly. And then there's synchronicity, those meaningful coincidences. The book suggests we should pay attention to those, interpret them. Maybe they're messages from the universe guiding us along.
Synchronicity is so fascinating. It's like when everything just seems to align perfectly, or you encounter something that feels like it was meant for you, like it was meant to happen.
Right. The book encourages us to be open to that, to recognize that there might be more to the world than we can see or fully understand.
It's about trusting our intuition, believing that maybe there's a deeper meaning behind those seemingly random occurrences.
Exactly. The book also talks about the modern hero's journey and how understanding that archetype can help us grow and transform.
Oh, the hero's journey. That's classic. You see it in so many stories like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. It's about facing challenges, overcoming obstacles, and coming out stronger on the other side.
Right, and the book explores all the different stages of that journey, from the call to adventure to the return home. It's something we can all relate to, even if we don't realize it.
Yeah, like those times in our lives when we feel called to do something different, to step outside our comfort zones, to face our fears and embrace the unknown.
Exactly. And the book encourages us to see those challenges, those difficult times, as opportunities. They're chances for growth and transformation.
It's about finding the courage to embark on our own heroes' journeys, seeing ourselves as the protagonists of our own stories.
It's about taking ownership and crafting a narrative for our lives that's meaningful and fulfilling.
I like that. But the book also reminds us that the hero's journey isn't a solo mission, right?
Right. It's best done with support.
Finding your tribe, those like-minded people, and helping each other along the way.
The book also emphasizes the importance of developing resilience, that grit, especially in the face of adversity.
Yeah, life throws a lot of curveballs. We need to be able to handle them.
And the book suggests that resilience is tied to our sense of purpose and meaning. When we know why we're here and what we're striving for, it's easier to face those challenges.
It's like having that inner strength that helps you get back up when you get knocked down.
Exactly. The book gives some really great strategies for developing that resilience, like practicing gratitude, building strong support systems, and cultivating a positive mindset.
It's about remembering that you're not alone,
Yeah.
that we're all in this together facing similar challenges.
Exactly. We're all searching for meaning and purpose in a world that can be really chaotic and confusing. The book encourages us to support each other, share our experiences, learn from one another's journeys.
It's about creating that sense of community, that feeling that we're not alone in our struggles.
Okay, shifting gears a bit, the book also talks about this idea of the war on women.
War on women. Whoa, okay. What's that all about?
Well, it talks about issues like the commodification of women, the wage gap, the whole glass cliff thing. It's arguing that these things create a sense of injustice and inequality for women, and it feeds into that overall meaning crisis.
So it's acknowledging that women face unique challenges in a world that can often feel hostile or dismissive of their experiences.
Exactly. The book calls for a more equitable and just society, one where women are truly valued and respected for their contributions.
It's about creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, regardless of gender.
And it reminds us that fighting for equality benefits everyone, not just women.
Absolutely. Empowering women empowers society as a whole.
The book also talks about the importance of education and challenging those outdated gender stereotypes as ways of empowering women.
Yeah, breaking down those barriers and creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to succeed.
And it stresses the need for mentorship, for creating supportive communities for women.
Mentorship can be so powerful. Having someone who believes in you, who guides you, it can make a huge difference.
And supportive communities, they give you that feeling of belonging, a space to share your experiences and lift each other up.
It's about creating a sisterhood, a network of women working towards a common goal.
Exactly. And the book doesn't stop there. It also talks about self-care and self-compassion, especially for women.
Yeah, that's so important. In a world that demands so much of them, it's crucial for women to take care of themselves, both physically and emotionally.
The book really encourages women to prioritize their well-being, to practice self-compassion.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that we're all human, we all make mistakes. It's okay to be kind to yourself.
And the book links that self-compassion to a deeper sense of worthiness, to that ability to find meaning and purpose.
It's about recognizing your inherent value and believing in yourself.
Exactly. When you believe in yourself, when you know your worth, you're better equipped to navigate the challenges of life and create a world that's more just and equitable for everyone.
Yeah, it's so important for women to recognize their own value, their own worth. In a world that's constantly trying to define them by external things, finding that inner strength and self-belief, it's powerful.
It really is. And the book emphasizes that a lot, that sense of worthiness. It's not about achievements, or what other people think. It comes from within.
It's about tapping into something deeper.
Exactly. And it connects that inner sense of worthiness to spiritual growth, to that connection with something bigger than yourself.
It's about finding that sense of purpose that goes beyond the day-to-day,
Yeah.
that allows you to live up to your full potential.
Right. And going back to something we talked about earlier, the book dives back into the evolution of consciousness, picking up with Homo sapiens.
Okay, yeah, we were tracing that line.
Right. So Homo sapiens, they developed complex societies, they created all this amazing technology, they explored the planet.
We've come a long way.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the book is saying that all this progress, maybe it came with a cost.
It did. It argues that we lost something important along the way, that connection to nature, our spiritual roots, that sense of inherent purpose.
It's like we focus so much on the material world, on technology, that we forgot about our spiritual well-being.
And the book suggests that's a big part of this meaning crisis we've been talking about. It's like a call to rediscover that connection to nature, to find a purpose that goes beyond just, material stuff.
It makes sense. I mean, so much of our lives are lived indoors now,
Yeah.
totally detached from the natural world. That's got to have an impact.
Totally. The book also gets into this concept of the hedonic treadmill.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that earlier.
Right. It's this idea that if you're always chasing pleasure, always trying to get more stuff, you end up dissatisfied, empty.
It's like you're always chasing the next thing you think will make you happy, but the happiness never actually lasts.
The book argues that real happiness, it doesn't come from external things.
It has to come from within.
It comes from meaning, from connection, from doing things that bring you joy and fulfillment. And going back to that theme of spirituality, the book suggests that true happiness is tied to that, to spiritual growth, that feeling of connection with something bigger.
It's about finding that inner peace, that contentment that doesn't depend on what you have or what you achieve.
Exactly. It's about cultivating that. And, the book encourages people to explore their spiritual side, whether it's through traditional religion, connecting with nature, or just feeling a sense of awe at the universe.
It's about finding your place in the grand scheme of things.
Right. And the book reminds us that this whole journey of finding meaning, it's not always easy. There will be challenges, times when you feel lost, uncertain, but you have to embrace those challenges.
There are opportunities for growth.
Exactly. And remember, you're not alone.
Yeah, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
We're all trying to figure it out, make sense of this crazy world, find our own meaning.
The book really emphasizes that. We can find strength in each other, support each other, create a sense of community. It's not a solo mission.
That's a powerful message. And it brings us back to that core idea from the book. We have the power to create meaning. It's not something that's just handed to us.
It's in our hands. We have the ability to shape our own destinies, create a world that reflects our values, our hopes, our dreams.
Wow, that's a great way to put it. That's really inspiring. We've covered a lot of ground today, exploring all these ideas from overcoming the meaning crisis. It feels like we've just scratched the surface, though.
We have. It's a book you can revisit again and again. There's so much to unpack.
If you're intrigued by what you've heard today, I definitely recommend checking out the book yourself. It's packed with insights and practical advice. And remember, finding meaning, it's a personal journey.
There's no one right way to do it.
What works for one person might not work for another.
But by exploring these ideas, questioning your assumptions, connecting to something bigger than yourself,
you can start creating a life that's truly meaningful. Exactly. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Thanks for joining us today as we delved into overcoming the meaning crisis.
My pleasure.
And to everyone listening, remember, the power to create meaning, it's in your hands.